Welcome back to Arise Entertainment 360. Our next guest is a force to be reckoned with. He's the highest African-American Tony Award-winning producer of all time.
Wow, with 4 Tony Awards under his belt, this trailblazer is set to bring more diversity to Broadway and Hollywood. CEO of Simon Says Entertainment, Ron Simons, welcome to Arise 360.
Welcome!
Thank you, so great to be here.
First,
So
I love
nice
this
to
title.
have-
Simon Says Entertainment.
Simon
How cool is
Says.
that?
Touch your head, touch your nails, take all the Tony Awards home! Yes! Ron!
Yes.
What a blessing to be in your presence. That's
Oh,
no small
yeah.
feat.
You're very kind of that. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been an exciting journey, I have to say that.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Now, your Broadway credits include
Right, run the list.
cough. I have to read it because there are so many. A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder,
Right.
Porgy and Bess, A Streetcar Named Desire, to name but a few.
Yes.
Do you have, or I should ask, which was your favorite production and why?
Yeah, that's a
Oh
good
God,
one.
that's really tough because I love all the ones that I do by definition, for different reasons. For example, I loved Jitney. I thought Jitney was the most amazing ensemble piece that I'd ever seen.
Which you
And
just won a Tony for?
was just won a Tony for.
Which the most amazing piece I've ever seen.
If I do say so myself.
I'm a little biased. It's true. It's true. I'm a little biased. But to be fair, the artists who worked on that show were extraordinary. I mean, the directing, the design, the music, the acting, it was all off the chain. I have to say that everyone delivered like in spades,
Yeah.
tens across the board.
Well, that's why I got so much great positive reviews from across the board. Everyone said great things about it.
Yeah.
But we see the final product when it gets to the stage. Since you see it from conception to completion, what are some of the behind-the-scenes secrets or moments that you've experienced in some of these great plays that we all know?
Oh, look at that
Nice.
smile.
It's just God, there's so many because like I'm developing a new piece now called Ain't Too Proud, which is a musical about the life and times of the Temptations. So you know the music's gonna be good. The music is amazing, and we ran it at Berkeley Rep. And it broke all their box office records in the 30-year history of the theater. So it's always interesting to me, you know, when you are developing a project and it's not quite yet to Broadway, which is what you said you got to see, because along the way you are constantly, especially for a new work, refining and rebuilding. You know, we are literally rewriting things even after Berkeley, right? So the challenge is to keep that initial momentum that you see in the early stages and build upon that to go further along. There's always going to be some kind of conflicts between producers perhaps and the creatives, but a good team can eventually coalesce and get on the same page, and that's why you get things like Hamilton or Jitney or other successful productions.
Wow. Okay, so talk to us or share with us exactly what a Broadway producer does.
That's a very good question because before I became one, I had no clue. No, it's true. And there are different. I think the first thing is to know that there are different categories of Broadway producers.
Okay.
There are the people who are the lead producers on a Broadway show, and those are the people who are responsible for the initial everything about the production. They hire the cast, the crew. They negotiate with the theater. They start the initial fundraising, and their name is at the very top,
Right.
Above the title. Below them are what are called co-producers, and that's the majority of what I've done so far, which is we are consultants to the lead producers, and we sit in the room and we view, the advertising, the marketing, the promotional materials and activities that we're doing to promote the show, and we go out and raise money too, or sometimes we invest our own money. But the the lead producer is kind of like the CEO of the corporation, right? And then the co-producers in more business parlance are more like the vice presidents who, serve the lead, but make the decisions in terms of recommendations and so forth.
Amazing.
Wow.
So, and everybody raises money because it's not inexpensive to put on a Broadway show. Broadway musicals can cost 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, or in cases like Spider-Man, $65 million
Wow, just to get out the gates.
before you even open. $1 million. Exactly. It's not for the faint of heart, I'm just saying.
Clearly
Wow.
not.
Right.
So do you not get like heart palpitations sometimes?
Like every show, like every show, because I sit down and I go, because I'm a lead producer, so I have to raise for, this is a more smaller budget, but I have to raise, my part of it is $750,000. You know what I mean? That's a lot of dough, and that's just one project, right? And then I have the other projects as well. So I think I calculated the other day that I have to raise about $8 million, right?
Sure.
So if any investors out there need some money, come my way, wherever.
So look, I
Feel free to call me if you don't get through to him.
I got $10 on it, okay?
What can I get me?
Right. But that seems mind-boggling for normal people. How do you go about raising that much money? Is it a crowdfunding? Is it just calling your friends, your mama, your cousins, everybody you know?
Well, you call your friends, your mamas, your cousins, and Baby's daddy, and her baby, and her Sherman.
Who is Baby?
It's just who you're being referred to. But bottom line is, you obviously have to go way outside of your sphere of influence, and you're constantly meeting new people. You're constantly talking about the kind of work that you're doing. It helps if you have a track record of winning Tony Awards, because people say, well, they must have good taste. They must know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But you are always, I meet people on trains, planes, on the subway, and you talk with them, and then you just talk about what you're doing. And if they get turned on by what I'm saying, and they ask, then I'll tell them. I don't push things into people, because producing for Broadway, I tell people all the time, if you want a really great return on your money, don't give it to me. I got a great guy out in Seattle who works for Ameriprise that will hook you up. Don't give it to me. But if you want to, but it is, it's true. I don't want to like people say, oh, you invest in this and you're gonna make a whole lot of money. 70% of all Broadway shows fail.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Just saying. So if you want to get involved and hobnob with the people and go to the opening nights and go to the parties, and ideally with my kind of work, change the world in some way, then give me your money and we can make something happen.
I like that.
Okay. So we mentioned that you are the highest, or the African American producer with the most Tony Awards on Broadway. And along with that, we're seeing a lot of diversity in Hollywood.
Yes.
Do you think that that is the same for Broadway? Because we're seeing plays like The Color Purple and Once Upon a Time and even Hamilton.
Even Hamilton.
We're seeing a lot of black people on Broadway now.
Right. Well, I think that we have seen a good number of people on Broadway. Where the lack of presence has taken place is people who are not on the stage, right? We have very few African American stage managers, for example. There are only a couple of us who are African American producers who do that for a living. And in this day and age of 2018, to know that there are 2 or 3 Broadway producers who are African American, it boggles my mind. But that's the state of affairs. So I'm always trying to encourage more people of color to come in. I do free seminars to people who are producers of color, who want to be producers of color, and give them, some introduction to what that means.
Well, real quick, I know a lot of people in Hollywood are calling for inclusion writers. Is there something similar for the Broadway theater type of groups?
There are writers who collaborate, but there's no formal entity that people subscribe to. So I would like to see that, because honestly, my Turn Me Loose, Ain't Too Proud, the book is being written by Dominique Morisseau, who's this amazing African American woman playwright who's doing her Broadway debut with this show, right? Wow. And so I want to see more women, particularly, and women of color to make their space and own their space on Broadway. So it's really, the onus is upon not just me as a producer of color, but all producers to seek out more diversity behind the scenes in the advertising companies, in the PR companies, in everywhere. We've got to always ask, so how many people of color do you have in your organization before you give them your money?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I like that. Okay. So basically, if you have the voices behind the stage, then we'll see it represented on stage.
And I think not only that, but I think it'll also help with the kinds of stories that are represented on stage.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because I think depending on what your perspective is, you have to expect that an African American might have a different perspective on what's current, what's topical, what's critical to the African American community than maybe someone who's not from that culture.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we are running out of time. Unfortunately, I could talk to you all day.
Okay, we'll get one more in real quick. Advice to other aspiring producers. Go.
Come to my seminar, first of all, number one, but find a mentor. Talk to someone who can give you a sense of what it's like, because that is the really most important thing to help you begin, because beginning is real hard. Then once you get things going and you get your first 2 shows out of the way, I think you'll learn the ropes.
Where can we get more information on your seminars?
You can follow us on www.simonsayesentertainment.com, and we're also on Facebook, of course, and Simon Says Entertainment.
Okay.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank
Simon
you
says it's
so
time to go.
much.
It's time.
Simon says that does it for us here at Horizon Entertainment 360. Bye-bye.